So thank you so much, Aurora, for these presentations, and I'm really happy to be here and to meet some people, some names that I already knows from previous project. Just few things. Aurora, maybe I was too exhausted to say that I'm one of the main experts. So I'm working on these issues since quite a long time. So I will not have, let's say, the ambitious to be the main expert of. And most of all, about my participation in the INET, in the international network of new economic thinkings, so the Young Scholar Initiative. I was the founder of a working group working exactly on gender economics. So looking at the bias and gender bias in economics as a discipline and as methods to define and analyze the economic and social phenomena that are around us. So today I will speak to you about, a specific topic, most of all linked to the definitions of excellence and how also some measures of research and so evaluations of research of academic stuff can have a biased impact in terms of gender bias. So I will share with you the presentations of the speech, of course, why I think that. Do you see my screen is in full? See that it's going back and forward. Is yeah. Okay, yes. So great. As you can see, unfortunately, I don't see anymore the message in the chat. So if you have any questions, please be free to open up your microphone and ask me directly. So interrupt me whenever you want. As you can see from the title of this short presentation that we will have together, I will talk about the concept of excellence in the research in academia and how this should be seen as a concept that is socially constructed and not gender neutral. And so I will concentrate on economics since it's my main field. I'm an economist. I'm an economist, I'm a feminist economist, and I'm a member of this laboratory that is called Minerva. Minerva, that maybe some of you already knows from previous project. That is a laboratory that is part of the Department of Statistical Sciences in Sapienza University of Rome, and work exactly on diversity and gender inequalities, attracting different types of expertise coming from all different kind of field of research, from economic to political sciences to engineering to sociology, demography, statistics, also architecture. We have a lot of urbanism right now that are working in our laboratory to define a city that could be reducing gender bias and could be considered as a feminist cities. And so, the main aim of this laboratory is to develop collaborations among scholars and activists that are working on gender studies to define, quantify with qualitative and quantitative methods all the different dimensions of inequalities that we can have in our society. Of course, if you're interested, we have social media since now you have to be on social media, otherwise you do not exist. So we have a Facebook account, in Twitter X account, and the last website that you find is our website in Sapienza University, where you can find all the different events that we are running nowadays, and the next part of our research path and what are we working on. So mainly, I mean, what I will present you today is part of, let's say, a process, I will say. So a connection of different kind of projects that we conducted to define the fact that when we speak about excellence in the research evaluation, so in the institutional dimensions of how universities, how academia is defined, we have to define that this concept can be full of biases. And so these concepts of excellence are socially constructed concept. I say that this is a process that we are trying to define and to quantify. So how these different definitions of excellence in research is increasing biases among researchers, among fields of research, among university for the public funding, because we during the time, I speak about we because we are a group of researchers that we are conducting this kind of research. We published, I mean, in time, during this time, during the last years, several numbers of paper among on this specific topic. First of all, I mean, we try to define how research evaluation methods that are based on bibliometrics. So the counting, for example, the number of publications that you have, of the counting of the number of citations that you receive from your articles, from your paper books that you publish, are biased. And so, most of all, the impact of the use of these bibliometrics methods to evaluate the quality of a piece of research tend to, I mean, reduce the diversity of research in terms of uh, teams, or in terms of field of research, and tend to, I mean, penalize most of all the researchers that are working on the less popular research field. And this is alarming for the pluralism of the research, since there is a reduction in the plurality of research ideas and research interest of researchers that are embedded in the academic spheres and academic world. Um, we base this analysis looking at the context of Italy, since, I mean, in Italy, we had been exposed in the last decades to a quantification, so a different methods of evaluation that is heavily nowadays based on the quantification of these citations and number of publications for the access, the career progress of the single researcher inside the Italian academia, but also for the distributions of the public funds to the single university around Italy. So other research, a piece of research that we conducted in this specific area to look at how different dimensions of definitions of the quality of research have an impact. It can have a biased impact is conducted one more looking at the economic spheres, looking at economic discipline, and we have seen and we have quantified that the impact of the use of this bibliometric evaluation, so the use of the quantification of citation received or the number of paper that are produced per year or per number of year, tend to once more to induce a process of homologation of research methods and topics in the economic spheres. And most of all, there is a huge reduction in the pluralism of how economics is teach is used is used to have been proposed in the economic courses in an Italian university, and also of course on the main field of analysis, since for example there are really few pieces of research recently that analyze the economic local context, while much more we have an interest in publish some piece of research about the economic analysis or society of the US context and so on. This is only because it's more possible to publish piece of research that are interested in US analysis than in the local context economic analysis. And this is, of course, a problem that we have to define if we want to have, again, a qualitative and equal way of evaluating the academic stuff. What we also look at is the process of citation. Since sometimes, and in most of the countries, there is this increase in considering citations as a measure of quality of a piece of research. We define and we test it and quantify how citations depends on the similarities among different academic staff, among different scholars, instead of being exactly a proxy of the scientific quality. Meaning that I used to cite someone because it's, really next to me in the network of people that I know, that I work with, and not because mainly this piece of research is really the best that identify the things that I want to say. And what I will speak today mainly is the reflections and the quantification that I try to define, looking at the way we define the excellence in economics and how these measures of excellence in research in economics has an increase the gender bias and reinforce the power hierarchical patriarchal structures in our economic professions. And I will speak about economics because, once more, it's my field of research. So we have to start from which is the context where we, all as academics, work in. So most of all, the trend that we can find all around the world is that due to the reduction in the cost, the austerity criteria, we have all around the world a growing pressure for audit and evaluation of public spending on higher education and research. And of course, universities goes under this audit and evaluations processes. And most of all, all around the world, first of all, this process was introduced by the Anglo Americans university and system is a huge and an increasing use of metrics and quantitative indicators on the different aspect of research. So, meaning that we have to quantify how much you produce as researcher to be evaluated and to be audited in the expenditure on the higher educational and research areas. And most of all, these quantitative indicators about the production, the academic productions of single researcher or of institutions such as single universities or single research centers are mainly based on number of publication produced and the number of citations that uh, publications used to have. And the use of these metrics and quantitative indicators on different aspects of research has been imposed because of there was a need to reduce the cost and the bureaucratic burden in the evaluation process so that it could be possible to identify one or more metrics that could be used to assess research quality to support and replace the peer review process. What is the peer review process? Is the fact that to define if a piece of research is excellent, good, not so good, or bad, we have to read each piece of research. Once I read the article, I can say that according to, the criteria that I want and my idea of the discipline, this piece of research is good, bad, excellent, and so on. Instead, to reduce this cost and the bureaucratic burden, what was, the process at the international level was to, assign a metric to quantify the quality. And one of the other, aspect that was stressed in favor to increase the use of metrics and quantitative indicators on different aspects of research to evaluate and assess the quality of piece of research is that this is also a way to be more neutral, so support a more transparent evaluation approach. So, if you read a piece of paper, maybe you like, you don't like, and this is could be, let's say, a subjective criteria. We define instead indicators that could be, let's say, objectives, and so we support this kind of evaluation process. But we have also a process where all around the world we have an underrepresentation of women in the universities. And when I speak about, university, I'm speaking about the academic staff, not the students. Since, for example, in some faculties, also in Italy, we have a higher number of women than men that are students that are enrolled as students at the university. But still, when we have to look at the academic staff, and most of all, when we have to look at the high hierarchical positions in the academia, so among the professor, among the full professors, the shares of women tend to, decrease a lot. Are much, much lower than the share of women among the students in the same faculties. There are some studies that are looking at the fact that we have misogyny in the academic world, and so women tend to be under evaluated just because they are women. And so there is a really nice piece of research by Alice Hu that analyzed the job market for academics, and she analyzed the way women and men scholars are called, which are, the adjective to define their work. And she found that just because there is a woman or a man, the way of framing the adjectives of his or her research are changing a lot, and are changing in the way that the piece of research of women are usually under evaluated than those of men. What we can find also on the global spheres is that we can find a persistent vertical segregation in academia. So really few women in the top of hierarchical positions. So I'm not referring just to rectress or so on of university, but also to the fact that there are still a lower number of a low share of women among full professors, that is, the hierarchical positions in the academia spheres, than in the other sectors of the career path of a researcher in the in the academic spheres. I concentrate also in economics, as I already told you, because it's my field of research and where I work, but also because in the last years it was underlined by a massive piece of research and massive literature on this kind of field, that the field of economics, and this is a quite a known piece of research by Amanda Bayer and Cecilia Elena Rose, that analyze the differences and the gender differences in different disciplines, and they find that the field of economics is behind other in its process on diversity concern. This is really interesting to look at, because economics is a social science, but want to have the same evaluation process for its researchers as let's say, a no more technical mathematic field of research. What we found, since we had this reduction in the tension to reduce the cost of the research all around the world, this increasing in the evaluation processes, in the assessment of research, of course, and then we have also an increase in more competitive environmental imposed by this kind of new audit and evaluation of the public spending. So, what I'm trying to give you today is extracting, some of the main results of one of the piece of research that I did is to look at how research evaluation methods are linked to the gender vertical segregation that we have in academia. So I tried to connect these two phenomena that I show you: an increase in the evaluation methods based on quantitative a matrix, and instead the still high gender gaps in the academia. So, first of all, let me say and let me contextualize how many people, how many women we have in the top, considered top economists. So, more the excellence in the economic spheres among the women. So, and to look at, let's say, the excellence in the economic discipline, we can look at different measures. For example, I mean, one of the main measures that is considered when we have to look at excellence in economic spheres is to look at five main journals, what we call the top five economic journals. So the five more cited journals that we have in the field of economics. Of course, I mean, as you can imagine, are all based and all published by United States editors. So if we look at, I mean, these five top excellent journals in economics, we can find that women represent only the 11% of all the authors that are published on these five top journals since 1990, the 12% since 2000, and the 14% since 2010. So, low share of women among the authors in the articles that are published in what are considered the excellent in the professions. But what also has been stressed in the literature is that also the power, so the gatekeeping, we call it gatekeeping power. So the opportunities that having published in these five top journals give you in terms of, for example, tenure or academic career is lower for women than for men. So, for example, a quite important piece of research by Ekman and Mokhtar in 2018 defined that for men, having two articles published in the top five journal is more than enough to get a 50% or a higher probability of attending of gaining tenure position at the first time when you have a competition offer. Instead, for women, even if they have, I mean, the same level of excellence, it takes, three minimum journal articles in these top five journals to get a tenure position. So also the power and the gatekeeping power that the publication in these excellent journals gives is different if we consider women or men. So another things that, and looking at different way we can define excellence, we can look at aggregated rankings of individuals that some main data set of publication give us. For example, the website and the data set of Web of Science has a list of global, highly cited authors. And in this case, if we look at the list of these excellence in the Web of Science, and so the most cited authors in Web of Science, we see that if we look at economics discipline, only the 8.8% of these highly cited researchers are women. So there are only 10 women out of 113 economists. If we move to another data set, so we consider, for example, Scopus, that is another data set of publications that where we can find, different piece of information about authors and publications. They also compute a list, so a ranking of the most cited authors that they have in a Scopus. And also, if we consider this list, we have just the 8.9% of women that are highly cited. And what about if we use REPEC? REPEC is another data set that is mainly used by economists, and we have a huge numbers of publications and authors that used to quote these their piece of research in this data set. Is that if we look at the list that they computed about the top 10% authors, so the authors that are more visible in REPEC, the share of women is even lower. We have the 7.6% of women that are ranked among the authors that are considered the top 10%. So, why we have so few women considered excellent in academia and considered excellent as academic economists? So, most of all, what I wanted to define is the way we define excellent that can introduce some bias that are and can be conceived as a barrier for women to reach the top of their career, of their visibility in among their peers. So, what I wanted to say is that if we consider excellence as is defined by the sociological literature, has a tool that is used, let's say, consciously or unconsciously to support hierarchies, practices, or norms that in turn underpin a hegemonic system. If we consider excellent as gender neutral, and so, as the main reference to define the quality and the excellence of research, of researchers, of article, we have two huge risks. The first risk, if we use excellence and we consider excellence as not a socially constructed concept and as gender neutral, we have the risk to reinforce power hierarchical, patriarchal structures in the economic profession and in academia, let me say, in general. And if we consider excellence as gender neutral once more, we tend to deny the advancement of women and diverse individuals in apical roles in the economics and in academia, in economics. So, to define and to try to challenge these assumptions about the gender neutral excellence measures that are commonly used to evaluate single individuals in academia, but also, once more, institutions, so university, scientific and research center to allocate public fundings. I structure my analysis looking at three main points. So the first question that I pose looking at data is how different definitions of excellent can systematically advance or disadvance women's visibilities in the ranking of top economists. So I want to find if there is some specific measures that tend to penalize women in accesses or gaining a high position in the ranking of among top scholars. The second point that, and the second main piece of research that I'm trying to expand is looking at which are the gender biases in the return of excellence in terms of proportion to full professorship. So, do women have the same access to the the highest, let's say, hierarchical positions in academia, having been defined as top scholars? And then I look at if there are some differences in the path through excellence. So, looking at, if there are differences between women and men to reach this path of differences. So, I ran this experiment looking at REPAC, that is a data set and the largest bibliometric data set in economics. We have analyzed more than 2 million works, a piece of research about more than 55,000 authors coming from different countries. We have more than 101 countries once more. All these works and its publication are economics research articles. What I analyze most of all is the ranking that they produce about the top 10% scholars. And as you can see, I use REPAC to look at the ranking of these top scholars, but I also run, some other investigations to find the academic status of all these authors that are ranked as top economists in REPAC. So the first idea is excellent gender neutral. So I had the opportunity to look at how different ways of ranking individuals, authors, among the different kind of criteria that we can have. As you can see in this slide, there are 36 criteria that are used by REPAC to rank people. So according to criteria that are based on the citations that the work receive, also, divided by the number of authors or counting the impact ways of the journal where they publish. If there are criteria based on the number of pages that are produced by the researcher, criteria based on the popularities. So how many abstract has been viewed, for example, or download, or criteria based on the networks among the co-authors. So with this 36 ranking, the final ranking of the 10% authors in REPAC is, let's say, the average, the harmonic mean of these 36 different ranking for each author. So, but we have huge differences if we look at how each scholar is ranked, if we consider different kind of rankings, a different kind of criteria to define excellence. So what I try to define is how, using this kind and these differences, different rankings, we can find, some specific rankings that tend to penalize more women than men. And to do that, I use, a statistical test that is called the Wilkins rank test that tends to compare the difference in the median positioning of the men and women for all these 36 different rankings of top authors. So the way of I computed the Wilkins rank test can be interpreted as that if we have a score of the test higher than the 50%, this means that on average, these criteria to define excellence tend to uh, rank better on average, and so higher in the list men than women. So looking at the main criteria, as you can see, so over there we have different criteria based on journal page counts, on centrality network, on criteria based on citations. But what you can find, and the scores of the Wilson rank test tell us is that usually women on average are penalized when they are used to be evaluated, to be considered when excellent is considered looking at the criteria based on the journal page count. And also if the centrality networks is considered, since we have the value of the test that is higher than 50%. Instead, if we consider criteria based on citation, still, we have a value of the test that is lower than the 50%. And so we can consider that in that case, they are not systematically penalized women if we consider excellence in that specific way. So what we can synthesize in that case is that, of course, depending on the criteria that we use, if we do use a average that tend to give more evidence to criteria based on journal page counts, on popularity, on co-authors of networks instead of citations, still, we do penalize women by default. I will go, a little bit farther since, we started a little bit later. And so I want to stress also the differences that we can have women and men in the returns to be considered excellent. So what I define in this case is a homogeneous group of women and men authors that are in the list of top 10% authors in REPAC. And I try to define this homogeneous group that has a first publications in REPAC between 2000 and 2010 to define which could be, the impact of excellence in publication instead of experience in academia. So the main fact that we define just looking at the profile of those women and men, this homogeneous group of women and men that are considered top authors in economics, is that the 80.5% of them among men are full professors. And if we look at the women, among the women top economists in that sense, only the 63% are full professors. And this is, just these numbers give us also the different access to the higher hierarchical positions between women and men. Also, if we consider, let's say, scholars with similar top quality publications. But also what we can find looking at the background of these economies is that among the full professors that are computed among the top economists in REPAC, the 70% of women hold a PhD in a top global university against the 48.5% of men. So this means that we have a barrier in the access that is higher for women than for men in principle. Also looking just at this um, uh, simple definitions of the profile of these top economists. But what is the impact of being a women on the probability of reaching the full professorship among this homogeneous group of women and men considered top economists? So I ran a public regressions, and what you can find here, I just give you the interpretation of this data, is that, and then also if we control for uh, background, university background, their affiliations, um, their PhD, and so the educational background, being a woman tend to reduce the probability to gain a full professorship also among the top economists, so the top scholars. And this is true also when we consider also their performance in these REPAC hierarchical top rankings of scholars. What is also interesting is this is in interactions that I run among being a woman and the performance that each scholars gain in the respective economic list is that being and having a higher positions in this ranking of top economists has a positive income in the possibility of gaining a position as full professor just for women and not for men. And this is also another way to see the fact that for women, the level, the barriers to gain the higher position are posed higher than for men. But also, what is the final definitions and the final um, results of different kinds of quantification that I try to define, looking at different niches of excellence that we can consider based on investigations, on the count of pages and so on, is that we can conclude that educational background are most of all significant only for women to gain a higher hierarchical positions. The performance in the rank of top economists in REPAC seems to play a role in gaining a higher hierarchical position in academia just for women. And most of all, what is really interesting in this is to look at the fact that women and men are evaluated in different way. And this is evident from data. So while citation are the poor predictor of the promotion to full professorship for women, they are strong predictor for full professorship for men. Instead, the number of publication is stronger predictor for promotion for women than for men. This means that women receive less recognitions than men in terms of promotion based on the criteria of excellence in which they excel. So I don't know if there are some question I saw that, I mean, almost I spoke maybe too much. I don't know. I see that in the chat there are some questions.
Well,
No?
Well, Giulia, I think that we still have sometimes if you want to carry on. If there are colleagues that are asking that would like to ask something now, please feel free.
Mhm.
Open your mic and ask question.
So can I get a few minutes more? It's not a problem, Aurora.
No,
Okay.
don't worry. We
Great.
want to find the positive. We want to be optimistic because, yes, give us not a solution, but something. Okay, carry on,
Yes,
Giulia.
I'm giving just the evidence from data, from the
Yes.
analysis. So let's go. So if there are not other questions, but I don't see any other questions or someone who is speaking about, don't worry at all. Of course, you can post questions whenever you want. But the final definitions is not absolutely a positive one. I'm sorry, but it's, let's say, more negative path that I found out is that how women and men do enter in this, let's say, club of top scholars. Do we have and can we see gender differences in the path through excellence that authors, that academics can have in the economic fields? Well, in that case, we analyze three different groups of economists: men in the top 10% auto rankings, women in the top 10% auto rankings, and then I analyze all those authors, women authors that are not considered as excellent, so are not in the top 10% auto risk. Of course, this is a international ranking. So meaning that, if you are in the top 10% auto ranking, it means that you are on top of the professions internationally. But looking at the background, the different identification of these authors, what is and what we can find, really effective is that among women that tend to write, to research on economic topics, we have a really high share of women that are not in the academic spheres. So, meaning that they are running economic research not inside academia, but in research centers, in the public research centers, in the NGOs, sorry, in all other kind, in the, for example, in the banking areas, in the central banking, and so on. So what is really interesting is that, a lot of women that are running research in economics are outside academia. And this is, once more, stress the fact that the barrier for entering and for succeeding in this area inside the university is really hard for women still today. What is also interesting is that, among top economists, if we consider women top economists, so those who are recognized as being the main authors for the disciplines, you can see that they are mainly based. 66.5% of those female authors are based in United States. So meaning that they have an affiliation in United States. And this is, of course, that you can imagine a concentration of few, really few people that are over there. If you look at instead the concentrations of women that are not in the top 10% auto risk, for example, the share of women in that case that are affiliated, so working in United States, are just the 43.8%. So in higher concentration. So meaning that looking at that, we have to say that just few women that are considered top economists are outside the academia. And most of all, if you want to be a top economist, you have to, be in a club of economists that are mainly based in United States. And this is something that, of course, students and scholars from peripheral areas, particularly, for example, Italy, but also Africans or Latin Americans or Asian countries experience from, their shoulders, and they already know what exactly this means. So, also looking at the publication trends. So, what we can see is that, and here we have trends in the looking at what they research on women in top 10% auto rankings, women not in top 10% workings that are the dots in these trends, and men in top 10% auto rankings. What we can see is that this is the mean number of journal articles by period. And what we can see is that still men tend to publish and to publish more journal articles than women, but still, the path, the trend, it's increasing also for women. So meaning that, we have still an increase in the gaps looking at the number of journals. Here instead we have, instead the mean number of articles published, we have the mean number of citations received per year by each researcher. And what we can find here is that, since the beginning of the 2000s, there has been a huge increase in the citations received by articles that has been published by women. So mainly, you can see the black line is running at a higher speed than the other one. Meaning that, those women are, those are who are considered top authors have on average a higher number of citations. So this means that maybe women authors learned that citations are an important criteria to be considered top scholars, and so they try to define some strategy to increase their mean number of citations per article. What is also interesting here is that we use these indicators of concentrations of fields of research, or different thematics, looking at geocode. These are how we label different kind of interest in our research among economists. And what is interesting here is that we have a trend in a reduction of specialization of researchers. So meaning that in time, top economists, and this is, popular for all authors. So women, men, and women top economists and not top economists. We try to, publish on different kinds of piece of research. But what is also interesting is that there is a trend, also a different trend in how you can publish in something that is not considered popular or mainstream in our academia. So as you can see, I mean, the share are really low. So there are really few people that are considered top economists that are running research that is not considered orthodox. But I mean, still, I mean, for women top economists, we have a huge pressure to reduce their publication in what is considered not mainstream. So, following let's say, more pressure for homologation to a mainstream idea of top quality in our discipline. So what I stressed here and today with this data is that measure of quality, of excellence, of research are not gender neutral. So we have to consider, we have to be really aware that depending on which kind of measures of excellence I use to define the quality of one piece of research, I can have different impact in terms of definition of gender bias in the quality of a research among researchers. So the fact that we have to define, I mean, one just one measure of excellence in terms of ranking of individuals is, I mean, per se, and so by definition, gender bias, and having this ranking of individuals contributes to limit the success of women in academia and in particular in the field of economics. As I already told you, I mean, there are some ranking that penalize more women in terms of looking at their lower productivities. There could be also biases in the criteria that are used to use this excellent ranking for career path and for reaching the top hierarchical position, the full professorship positions. I don't have, of course, a solutions, and there is not an easy solutions, of course, as you can imagine, to support women's career in economics professors. But I mean, what I can stress here is that we should reflect on the fact that we could have a critical reassessment of what we define as excellent and what should we count as merit to enter and to have a successful career of inside a university. So this means that we have to, I mean, distress this idea of excellence in research, but we should put at the center of our assessment in terms of individual researchers, but also in terms of assessment or the redistributions of public funds to the universities. We have to conceive a evaluation process and assessment that tend to define the diversity and tend to give more value to those people that have diverse ideas, as are working on diverse piece of research, but also on diverse activities inside the academia. but also those structures that have more diversity in their sense. So, for example, and these are, some ideas that we can start from looking at the assessment in a way that do not look only on excellence, that is a bias definition, but we center the evaluation process on diversity. And so, looking, for example, at the evaluation of research, we could envision, for example, a peer review on the unpublished work that should be blinded and evaluated instead of looking piece of research that has been already published by authors to define if they can enter or progress in their career inside the university. For example, looking at the committee that tend to evaluate candidates to enter or to progress inside the university, we should define the fact that we should have diverse committee in terms of gender, academic ranking, research field. So pluralism, it's really important also to define not only diversity in, let's say, the gender or the physical and characteristic of the person, but also plurality, diversity of ideas, so pluralism in the research. Should be, evaluated not only the publication side of the researcher, because this kind of excellence measurement look at just the quality of research, not considering anything about all the other academic activities that people and their research are running. For example, the teaching experience, for example, the program and the project that has been run, the internationalization of this researcher. This is something that actually is not evaluated so well. So, because we have a concentration on the productivity, the academic productivity, to the number and the quality of the piece of research. And so, of course, we should have a committee of minorities in each professors that look at the and monitor the situations and the impact of different kind of methods and different kind of assessment that are run inside the universities and inside each field of research nationally and internationally. So I think that is, could be a base to define and to, rethink how we should conceive excellence. So not looking just at the quality as in terms of metrics and number of publication, number of citation that we receive, but looking at the diversity of ideas and of piece of research that we produce, and not only piece of research, but also activities, academic activities that we run. And this could be, a way of thinking in a different way. So I ran really quickly on this, but this is an article that you can read. You have the link here if you're interested. You can download, and you have access to all the different quantifications and analysis that I show you in these few minutes. And of course, this is my email. If you are interested, if you want to have more information, feel free to write me whenever you want.